Good morning, everybody, or good afternoon, or good evening, depending on where you are. Welcome to day 2 of the ASEAN Sustainable Tourism Solutions Expo 2020. I hope you all had a good day at the expo yesterday and you managed to check out some of the panel discussions and workshops that we had scheduled. And also don't forget that we also have the exhibitors section where there's a number of really great exhibitors who are contributing to sustainable tourism development in the ASEAN region. So please do check that out. So today is the second day of the online the online expo, the last day. We have a busy day filled mainly with workshops, and we also have one panel discussion coming up at 10:30 this morning, Laos time. So to kick things off today on day 2, I would like to introduce our workshop speaker, whose name is Mr. Patricio Gonzalez Morel. So Patricio is going to be delivering a workshop on cutting operation costs through resource efficiency. So Patricio is an engineer with 20 years of experience in sustainability. What he plans to share with you during this workshop are low-cost environmental measures that help hospitality businesses reduce energy and water consumption. The solutions that he'll be sharing with you are based on detailed sustainability assessments that have been carried out at hospitality businesses around the world, and they've been proven to reduce costs while at the same time improving environmental performance. So we really hope that the learnings from this workshop will be really important for businesses that are keen to become more sustainable while also cutting operation costs at the same time. Now, a quick bit of housekeeping before I hand the stage over to Mr. Patricio. So we will try to have time for a few questions at the end of the workshop. So Patricio's workshop is going to last around 1 hour. So if you do have any questions, please post them in the Q&A box, not in the chat box, but in the Q&A box, which you see at the bottom of your screen. And we'll do our best to get through as many of those as possible. But in any case, Patricio's contact information will be available on the slides. So you can contact him directly if you have any questions. And all of Patricio's slides will also be shared with you via the ASTSE website after the conclusion of the expo. So now, Patricio, I'd like to hand over to you.
Well, thank you very much, Amir. Good morning, everyone, and thank you very much for being here. It's a pleasure to spend a little bit of time with you and to talk to you about this topic, which I find to be enormously important. So as Amir mentioned, I'm a mechanical and environmental engineer. I've been doing sustainability work, hands-on sustainability work in hotels for more than 23 years now. I've worked with more than 400 hotels all over the world. And what I would like to do for the next hour is to share with you some of the things that I've learned over the course of that time. So, the topic of the presentation is just, I'm going to give you a brief overview on resource efficiency in the hospitality industry. After that, I'll give you 2 case studies to kind of give you an idea of what the impact of resource efficiency can be on operating costs and profitability of hotels. And then after that, I'll finish off by giving you a series of examples on resource efficiency measures. And these are things which are very simple, low cost, high impact, and things which you could do almost immediately as soon as you return back to your hotel, to your restaurant, to your bar, or if you don't have any of those, you can actually apply them at your homes. So the first part, resource efficiency in the hospitality industry. So just first to begin with a brief explanation of what resource efficiency is. It's basically the application of measures that improve the efficiency with which a business, any business, in this case we're talking mainly about hotels, that improve the efficiency with which the business uses energy, materials, chemicals in its facilities and in operations. The main focus of this presentation is going to be water and energy. However, this also applies to basically any resource that is used by a business, including obviously materials, food, chemicals, etc. So resource efficiency enhances both the environmental performance and also the financial performance of a business. And so it's the logical first step that should be taken by any business that wants to improve its long-term sustainability. So besides saving you money and also making you a little bit more, or quite a bit more environmentally friendly, resource efficiency also brings a lot of other benefits. First of all, it allows you to improve your competitiveness. When I started doing this business 23 years ago, nobody cared about sustainability. And as a matter of fact, the word hadn't been invented, at least not used in the way in which it is used now. However, nowadays, more and more businesses are becoming or are claiming to be more sustainable, and any business that doesn't follow suit is going to be left out in the cold. Not only that, but especially in these times, which are rough for everyone, resource efficiency is probably one of the best ways in which you'd be able to control your operating costs and perhaps make a little profit out of your operations, because there's not much you can do to lower your prices any further. And attracting new guests and new business is actually going to be quite difficult for a while. So where you can cut is in all of your wastage. Resource efficiency also enhances the images of the business. As I just mentioned just now, basically everybody's trying to become more sustainable, even though now there's been a slight hiatus because of COVID. I think that once the COVID crisis is over, the next big crisis on the horizon is going to be climate change, and therefore everyone will have to take this very, very, very seriously. Next, and this is a very important one, is that resource efficiency improves the performance of your existing equipment, as well as reduces the cost of any future equipment upgrades that you may need to invest in. And the reason for this is basically a property that is resource efficient will make sure that all of its equipment is used properly, is maintained properly or as well as possible, and that is not abused. And here we're talking about just about any piece of equipment. It could be AC units, it could be water heaters, it could be pumps. And here I'll give you an example. This is a picture that I took in a hotel in Laos where I worked 2 years ago. And when the hotel was newly refurbished, they had installed these systems. These are heat pumps that heat up the water. So these are they basically look like AC units, but what they do is that they harvest heat from the air and put it into the water that is contained here in these water tanks. And when they opened the hotel, they realized that very often they started running out of hot water. So what they did is that they started off with 3 of these units, and they added another one here, the 4th one, and then that wasn't enough, so they added a 5th larger one here. Now, when we conducted the sustainability assessment of this property, we realized that all of their showers and all of their taps consumed about 2 times more water than necessary. So instead of adding more hot water capacity, they would have been much better off at improving the efficiency of their taps and of their showers, and they would have been able to resolve this problem of shortage of hot water without having to spend all of this money and without doing all of this work. And reducing the output of a tap or of a shower takes a minute, it costs almost nothing, and it's enormously profitable. So that is something that you can gain out of resource efficiency. Another benefit that I would like to talk about, this is the last one, but certainly not the least of them, is that resource efficiency also improves guest experience and minimizes risks. The reason why it improves guest experience is, as I just mentioned, is that normally properties that are really focused on resource efficiency, they really pay attention to their equipment, so everything runs well. And if things run well, you're going to have fewer breakdowns, and your guests are going to be much happier. A good example of how resource efficiency can minimize risks is this one. Basically, the hot water supply in rooms. As the example that I just showed you a second ago, is what happens very often when properties start running out of hot water is that either they can increase the size of their water heaters, or an easier solution is just to crank up the temperature of the hot water in the water heaters. And like that, your stock of hot water is able to last you for much longer. But the problem with that is that hot water can be incredibly dangerous. And this is a picture that I took in a hotel that I worked with not too long ago. And as you can see here, this is the hot water. The temperature of this water was 90 degrees C. 90 degrees C is the temperature of water at which you make a cup of coffee. It's not the kind of water that you want to be showering with. And the problem with this is that it can actually, it can be extremely dangerous. This is what a third-degree burn looks like. And if the normal temperature of hot water, the hot water that is supplied to a room, should be between 50 and 60 degrees centigrade. And here you see at 50 degrees centigrade, you would need to leave your hand under the water for 5 minutes in order to get a burn like this. At 60 degrees C, it takes 5 seconds, but I mean, 5 seconds, you have the time to react. But at 90 degrees C, it takes less than a tenth of a second or a tenth of a second to get a burn like this. So basically, even the slightest contact will send you to the hospital. And every year, hotels around the world not only send a lot of their guests to the hospital because of burns, but they actually end up killing quite a few of them as well because of this same story. So now here, if instead of just cranking up the temperature of the hot water supply, they had reduced the wastage of hot water by making sure that all of their taps and all of the showers consume no more hot water than absolutely necessary, they would have been able to maintain a reasonable hot water temperature in their rooms without endangering anybody's health. So what are the barriers to resource efficiency? Because very often when at least when I speak to hoteliers, I hear all sorts of stories. And if I had to trust what they said, I would believe that resource efficiency, implementing resource efficiency in a hotel would be nearly impossible. In reality, however, there are no barriers whatsoever. And the reason for that is that the improvement measures that we are mainly talking about, they are simple, they are inexpensive, they're quick to implement, they are enormously cost effective. And these are what we call the low-hanging fruits. They're called low-hanging fruits because they're so easy to pick, you don't even need to make an effort. So these are resource efficiency measures. Oh, well, actually, this is not a resource efficiency measure. This is renewable energy. But very often when you speak to hoteliers about resource efficiency or sustainability, these are the things they think about: solar PV panels on the rooftops, solar water heaters, energy efficient air conditioning systems. Although all of those technologies are perfectly fine, that is not what we're going to be talking about, because these things are great, but they are actually not that cost effective, and certainly not as cost effective as a lot of the low-hanging fruits that we will be talking about. So the types of things that this presentation will focus on, and that probably 90% of my work focuses on, are things which are really, really simple. So here, these are faucet aerators that allow you to consume no more water than what you really need in a guest room tap, in a public bathroom tap, in a work area tap, etc. LED lamps, it's a no-brainer. They've been around now en masse for the past 5 years. Not having them makes absolutely no sense. Here, I'm talking about maintaining, cleaning the cooling coils on your AC units. I'm sure that you've seen these types of cooling coils. They are generally in the back of the outside units that you have in mini splits air conditioning units. After a while, they get coated with dust, and basically the flow of cooling air that goes through the unit gets greatly diminished, and therefore your unit stops working efficiently. Cleaning this takes very little effort and makes a huge difference. I'm also talking about things such as insulation. This would be insulation for pipes that are always hot, that contain hot water. For instance, if you have a hot water circulating loop in your hotel, they need to be insulated. Insulation is cheap and is enormously cost effective. Insulation also applies to the refrigerant pipes of AC units. So basically you have these copper pipes that connect the outside unit, which would be this, to the inside unit. They need to be insulated because otherwise heat goes into the refrigerant and your AC unit doesn't work very well. So it's very simple to install, low tech, no problem. I'm also talking about things as mundane as leaks in toilets. These things, they look like nothing, but they can double the energy, the water consumption of any hotel, and they can be enormously expensive. And something as mundane as line drawing, there's, I have another slide about this, but this is especially for those who are located in the tropics and that have access to abundant heat year round, having energy consuming laundry dryers is doesn't make any sense unless you absolutely have no space. So so again, going back to these barriers that I said there were none, and the reason why there are none is also because not only are these things simple, but also they yield returns on investments that are absolutely enormous. And to put this into perspective, I'd like to show you the following chart. Here, there's a, I showed a ROI that you get if you put the money in the bank, you probably get 1% or less than that. Basically nothing. If last year you had been clever enough to buy Amazon shares on the 1st of January, by the end of the year in 2019, you would have made a return on investment of 28%, which is really good for a stock. Actually, Amazon was one of the best stocks in 2019. However, look at the returns on investments that we can get out of the simple measures that we just talked about. Using LEDs instead of compact fluorescent lights, 150% per year. Using LEDs instead of the old style incandescent lamp, 480. Aerator, installing an aerator in a guest room tap, 3,100. Aerator on a kitchen tap, 8,500% per year. So basically, if you have money sitting in the bank and you haven't taken advantage of all of these basically free opportunities that abound in your properties, you should really reconsider, because you're wasting your time and you're blowing a lot of money. Okay. Then also there are no barriers to resource efficiency, because actually the improvement that can be achieved are really, really big. Very often you hear hotels, especially the bigger chains, they say, oh yes, we managed to reduce our overall energy consumption by 2.6% per year last year. And then we reduce our water consumption by 1%. No, 1% and 2% is absolutely nothing. Actually, unless you've really done a lot of work to improve the efficiency of your properties, you should be thinking of at least 20%, if not 30, possibly even more. So let me give you an example. This is a hotel that I worked with as part of a GIZ project in Luang Prabang just about a bit over a year ago. And the name of this hotel is Sala Prabang. It's a very nice hotel, 3 stars, located in Luang Prabang, in the old part of the city. We conducted a very quick resource efficiency assessment at this property that lasted for just 1 day. We gave the recommendations to the owner and GM of the property. They started working on them almost immediately, and look at the results that they achieved 2 months after we completed the assessment. They reduced our water consumption from 783 liters per room night. So this is indexed to their occupancies. It's not total water consumption. And this is a way the performance of any property should be calculated. So they reduced it from 383 down to 568 liters per room night. That's a 27% reduction in water consumption. And energy went from 25 kilowatt hours per room night down to 15 kilowatt hours per room night. This is a 40% drop in consumption. And later on, there's a slide where I'll show you what are the things that they did to put in place. But this was done in 2 months, So you should expect really big results if you do these things right. And most of these things are so simple that it would be difficult to do them wrong. But in reality, there are many barriers. But the problem is that, or perhaps the opportunity is that all of these barriers are just mental barriers. They're not physical barriers. And the mental barriers are in the heads of the people who run these properties. So the main issues is that, first of all, resource efficiency is not in the DNA of properties, of the hoteliers. I mean, hoteliers are great at creating beautiful hotels, giving their guests a wonderful experience. However, they're really not that good, or actually not good at all, at energy efficiency and water conservation and waste minimization. And that is understandable. I mean, there's nothing wrong with that. You know, it wasn't taught, it wasn't a topic that was taught when they went to school. So yeah, they're a little bit lost. Also, which is a little bit even more serious, is that resource efficiency is not viewed as a profit generator for hoteliers. Generally, if you talk to a hotelier and you ask them, okay, what can you do to boost your profits? They say, okay, increase occupancy, increase my room rates, sell more wine, sell more food, etc. But those are things which are actually hard to do. Because if it was easy to increase your room rate without losing a lot of business, most hoteliers would have done it a long, long time ago. So the way hoteliers normally see profits is this way. You increase your revenue by, let's say in this case, $1,000. The average profit margin in the hotel industry is 5%. So if I make $1,000 worth of revenue, I'm going to make $50 worth of profit. However, what they fail to realize very often is that the same relationship works in reverse. If you're able to have $50 worth of savings through resource efficiency, which is basically just money, free money, basically more profit, the impact of these savings is equivalent to on your profits would be the equivalent to the impact of increasing your revenue by $1,000. And believe me, it's a lot easier to save $50 by improving the efficiency with which you use your water, your energy, your chemicals, and your materials, than convincing more guests to come into your hotel, or increasing the rates of your property. So this is a very easy way to increase profits, by saving, by not wasting your resources. This is a much more difficult way. But at the end of the day, they both have the same impact, just that this is a lot tougher than that. Also, another barrier is that the main focus for many hoteliers, and especially I work with a lot of engineers and people who look after the maintenance of hotels, and their primary concern is to make sure that the hotel runs. So they want to make sure that the guests have hot water, that the AC unit in the room works, et cetera, which is perfectly fine. But especially when I speak to engineers, they tell me frankly, and say, well, I mean, my boss wants me to make sure that the hotel runs. He never asked me to make it run while using less energy. So if I need to fix something, for instance, an AC unit, I make sure that whatever fix I apply works, but whether it's efficient or not, it doesn't even cross their mind. As a matter of fact, what is really surprising is that even in some of the bigger hotels where I work at, I asked the engineer, do you know what the cost of a kilowatt hour of electricity is? Do you know what the cost of a cubic meter of water is? And in most cases, they have no clue. So you cannot expect people to be concerned about resource efficiency if the pressure doesn't come from the top. Another story that I hear very often is that, oh, we just don't have enough time to do this. We are just so busy, there's just not enough time. Well, it's kind of crazy to think that for the one type of work that will give you the biggest return that you will ever achieve, or that you will ever even dream of, that you don't have time for that, then there's something just tragically wrong, especially when you work in countries where the minimum wage, where the wage of your line staff is pretty low. Yes, perhaps what you should do is, if you really don't have the time, then hire another person that can work full-time or even part-time, just looking after these efficiency issues. And believe me, that person will pay for his or her salary 10 times, 100 times over. As a matter of fact, the properties that I see working best, being most efficient and most profitable because of this efficiency, are properties that have a person that is dedicated perhaps maybe half the time, or for the bigger properties, full-time, just on looking at resource efficiency, because those properties realize that this can really make an enormous difference on their profits. And then this is something that I've heard while the times were good. Very often from owners or from GMs, they would say, "Oh, Patricio, we really don't care about water efficiency or energy efficiency because, whatever cost we have, we just pass it on to your guests." That's not going to be happening for a while. And if those hoteliers hadn't had this attitude when I went to work with them, perhaps now they would be in much, much better shape because they would have been able to build up, a little savings that would allow them to survive more difficult times without panic. And then last, but again, certainly not least, is that there's very often a very inadequate monitoring of performance. So I work with a lot of hotels, some small ones, some medium ones, some big ones, and some really big ones. And my finding is that very often these properties, they just don't look at, or they don't look very carefully at, how much water they consume, how much energy they consume, et cetera, which is rather tragic because utilities, that is water, energy, is generally the second highest operating cost in hotels after labor. So if you don't control that very well, if you don't monitor that very well, then you're in serious trouble because you don't know where you're coming from, you don't know where you are, you don't know where you're going in terms of your second most important operating cost. And that is a sure path to disaster. So let me show you an example. Very often what I see when I work in these hotels is that, every day they send a maintenance worker or somebody around to record all sorts of numbers, meter readings, et cetera, et cetera. They write them down on a little piece of paper. These are the recordings of 2 days in one of the hotels where I worked at recently. And then very often they do absolutely nothing with these figures. So it's actually a total waste of time. Don't even go around measuring the meters if you're not going to do something with it. Some of the better properties, what they do is that they take all of these numbers, they put them in spreadsheets, and it allows them to kind of calculate their indicators. However, very often it's done in this format, which is basically a table. And now when I look at this table, it's going to take me, 5-10 minutes to figure out what all of these numbers mean. How did the consumption change between January of this year and January of last year? And so it's great that they're doing this, but this is really not that convenient. If there's a problem, unless I'm going to spend a lot of time looking at this table and figuring out how it works, this is not going to tell me a lot. What a property really needs is something similar to this. This is a proper dashboard in which you put all of your monthly readings, and then it gives you on a couple of screenshots all of the parameters that you want. So here this was a property that had electricity that came from the grid. They also had solar electricity. They also had generators. So they kept track of all three from month to month. This is their occupancy, and here this is the total amount of electricity you consume. This is how much electricity you consume per guest night for all of those months, and this is the average electricity consumption per guest night for the 3 years that are shown here, 2018, 2019, 2020. Now this is clear. When I see a spike like here, I can say, wow, something happened. And here I can see more or less how my performance varied from year to year. 2 years ago, we were at 84.4 kilowatt hours per guest night. After that, it went up to 87, but now we're down to 72. At least we're moving in the right direction. This is something very basic, and most properties need to do this. Perhaps it doesn't have to look this nice, but this is definitely this is a way in which you should be handling your data. After all, you're talking about the second largest operating costs in your property, in your business, and therefore it's not something that you should just overlook. So what is the impact of resource efficiency on the operating costs and on the profits of a property? And here I'll give you an example. I'll give you 2 examples. This is a hotel that's called Nicoya Island. It's based in Indonesia, close to Singapore. It's a very nice hotel. It's boutique, charges $320 per night. They are full all the time. They've been running at 90% occupancy for the past 6 or 7 years with 0 advertising budget, and they sell all of their rooms directly through their website. It's a beautiful hotel. It was designed with sustainability in mind to begin with. So the villas are open, there's no air conditioning, there's no TV, no minibar, no nothing. But still the place is truly magical, and that is why you have a 90% occupancy with no advertising budget. And what I did here is that I compared the performance of Nikoi with that of 4 other boutique hotels, similar boutique hotels that I worked with in Southeast Asia. So this is Indonesia, Malaysia, Laos, etc. And all of these properties were equivalent, except for the fact that, you know, Nikoi was designed with sustainability in mind. It wasn't, and it was also operated with sustainability in mind. So they really tracked everything. They did everything or almost everything right. And it shows when you look at the energy consumption of these 5 properties, Nikoi consumes something like 5 times less energy than its closest competitor. This is kilowatt hours per guest night. Okay, and the same thing happens with water. Here for water, Nikoi consumes about 4 times less water than its closest competitor, and probably, I think it was like 10 times less water than its, oh no, more, 15 times less water than its furthest, least efficient competitor. So what is the impact of all of this efficiency on Nikoi's operating costs? Well, by being so efficient, Nikoi managed to save $10,000 per room per year in utilities compared to its closest competitor. And the reason why the savings are so large is, first of all, the difference is absolutely enormous. And second of all of these properties are off-the-grid properties. So they have to produce their own electricity, they have to produce their own water, and therefore the cost of their utilities is fairly high. And if Nikoi had tried to, and by the way, so since this was kind of built into the design of this property, so most of this money is pure profit. If Nikoi had tried to increase its profits by $10,000 per room per year through other means, let's say by increasing revenue, it would have had to increase its revenue by $200,000 per room per year, which is about $550 per room per day, which you all know is something which is absolutely impossible to achieve. Okay, so this property, just by designing smart and by operating smart, they're able to outcompete their neighboring properties, similar properties, by a long shot and make a lot more money than any of them. Okay, so you would say, well, you know, it's very easy to be super efficient and to have very low operating costs when, you know, the property is designed in a way that doesn't require any AC units, etc., etc. So what about a regular hotel? What can the impact of resource efficiency be then? So I have another example for you. This is Salah Prabang. We saw this property just a couple of slides before. It's located in Laos, in Luang Prabang. It's a very beautiful hotel, 3 stars, $60 per night. That is their room rate. And what they did in order to achieve the savings that I spoke to you about earlier is basically these 6 things. They did a few more, but these were the main ones. They replaced all of their inefficient lights with LEDs. They improved the ventilation of their AC units. They reduced the inflow of outside air into their guest rooms and other air-conditioned spaces. They improved the efficiency of their taps and of their shower heads by putting in these aerators and flow restrictors, and then also they retired their laundry dryer and they started line drying most of their laundry. So what was the impact of all of this? Well, first of all, putting all of these measures in place just cost them $40 per room. And it allowed them, as we saw earlier, it allowed them to reduce their energy consumption by 40% and their water consumption by 27% in just 2 months. The financial savings achieved by these measures will allow them to save $2,100 per room over the life of the investment, and they recovered this investment in a period of just 2 months. So whatever, if they invested $1,000 today, 2 months later, they had already recovered that. And then after that, every 2 months, they would get $1,000 that they could just put in their pocket. So what was the recipe for success at this property? It was it was a very nice hotel, but it certainly wasn't falling apart. So it wasn't that they had absolutely enormous opportunities. It was well run. It was very similar to most of the other properties that I work with. The key ingredient at Salapalbang is that they had a management that was really proactive. And as soon as they heard of these things, wow, the only thing we need to do is what? LED lights, and it gives you a payback period of what, 1 month? Of course, they just ran and bought the things, and within, I think, a couple of weeks after we left, after we completed the assessment, they had already started working on all of these measures. And within 2 months, they had achieved these savings. Truly incredible. So the reason why I'm saying this is that I don't want anybody to think that the reason why properties cannot be resource efficient or more sustainable is because it's too expensive, too complicated, we just don't have the right staff, or this or that. No, anybody can do it. Anybody can do it. And by the way, I don't know who you are, but believe me, I've been doing this work for 23 years. I've never set foot in a hotel, and I've worked in more than 400 over the past 23 years where these opportunities did not exist. So I'm willing to bet my last dollar that the types of measures that we will talk about exist at your property. Maybe not fully, but at least they will exist in parts of your property. So here, the main blockage to improving the performance is the mindset of management, of top management, the owner, the GM, and the upper echelon of the hotel. They're the ones who need to lead the change. And if their mindset is not into it, this thing is just not going to work. But if their mindset is the right one, then the results can be truly astounding. I mean, there's nowhere else where you can invest money and get it back within 2 months and make an enormous return on investment. This is one of the few places where you can do this. So here's a complete case study that we produced for this hotel. I just inserted it in this slide. You'll have access to the whole presentation, so you'll be able to read this at your leisure. Okay, so now I just would like to give you some examples of some of these resource efficiency measures. The first one is to reduce the flow output of your high flow showers. Normally, in a guest room, you need to have a shower flow of about 8 liters per minute. The typical range that is efficient is 7 to 9. I've seen some showers that consume even less than that, and they still produce a great shower flow. But let me show you what happens. These are measurements that I took in a fairly large hotel. I didn't measure the flow in all of the rooms, but what you can see is that the shower flows, these showers, it varies. It went all over the place. In some rooms, it was up to 30. In some of them, it was at 8, which is spot on. In one case, it was a little bit less than 8. But as you can see, probably in less than 5% of their rooms did they have an adequate flow. In most cases, their flow were way, way greater than that. Now, I do understand, and probably a lot of you are thinking, oh, well, we really don't care that much about water because water is not that important. And that is a very common attitude. And the reason for that is that your water bill is a lot smaller than your energy bill. But what happens is that a lot of the water that is used in hotels is hot water. And heating water consumes an enormous amount of energy and therefore costs a lot of money. Just to give you an idea, in the tropics where the cold water that comes into your property is already warmish, heating the water for a 10-minute shower consumes 2 kilowatt hours of energy. And that's about as much energy as that consumed by running a standard LED guest room LED light, 5-watt LED lamp for 400 hours. 400 hours. None of you would be crazy, neither would I, would be crazy enough to leave an LED lamp turned on for 400 hours without any reason. However, most of you are running showers that are as wasteful as the ones that I'm showing here in this graph. Do me a favor, when you get back to your property, measure them and let me know. So what are the recommendations? Well, the solution actually to fix these problems is incredibly simple. You buy one of these things, it's called a flow restrictor, you install it here. This would be for a handheld telephone kind of shower head. So this is the hose that brings the water to the handheld shower head, or if you have a rain shower or a wall-mounted shower, you install this little piece here. You install it in less than a minute. You can buy these for different flows. I mean, it depends. And some vendors have a very wide selection. Some others have a shorter, tighter selection. But if you find a good vendor, you can buy them for 6 liters per minute, 7, 8, 9 liters per minute, so you can get whatever flow you want. They cost only $5 each. In some cases, you can get them even lower. And one of these things installed in a typical double occupancy guest room will give you $700 worth of savings per restrictor over a period of 5 years. Actually, these things last about 10 years. So the total savings would be about $1,400 for a $5 investment. It's a pretty good deal. Possible sources, normally I buy mine from internet vendors because where I used to live, nobody sold them. However, there is a company in Southeast Asia that sells them. It's called Tricontinental, and I believe they are one of the vendors that exhibits at the expo, so you can go and talk to them. Their prices are very competitive. I checked them, and actually they are about the same or even a little bit lower than the ones that I used to buy from my internet vendor in the US. There is a brand that I would recommend, not that these guys give me any money for recommending them. It's just one of the best brands out there on the market. It's called Neopearl. In any case, these things are so cheap and they last so long, and they will save you that much money that buying a no-name brand for $4 instead of paying $5 to get the best in the market is just absolutely nonsense. Next recommendation, reduce the output of your high flow taps. Efficient taps should consume about 2 liters per minute in public or staff restrooms, 4 liters per minute in guest rooms, and 6 to 8 liters per minute in most work areas. There may be like one tap in the kitchen where you fill up these big containers full of water that you need to have maybe 10, 12 liters per minute. But for most things, you don't need more water than that. Just keep in mind that you can shower with 8 liters per minute. So there's no need to have more than 2 liters per minute if you're just going to wash your hands. 4 liters per minute in a guest room if you're just going to wash your hands and brush your teeth. So yeah, these flows are perfectly fine. However, again, what do I find when I go and do this work in hotels? This is in the same hotel for which we saw the shower data. This is the tap flow in in some of their guest rooms, and you can see in a guest room you should have 4 liters per minute. All of their flows are all over the place. Some are lower, some are higher, some are up to 20, which is 5 times more water than you need. Absolutely crazy. So what are the recommendations? Well, the solutions are very simple. You install one of these things. It's called a tap aerator, and you just screw it on here on the tip. Most of your taps probably already have some of these, just that whatever piece is inside of them is not calibrated, is not efficient. You can buy a new one, install it there, and you will get whatever flow you want. So in most cases, the flow that comes out is aerated. If you have some public restrooms or staff restrooms in which the only thing you do is wash your hands, you can get one of these spray aerators. So it's like a little shower, and this allows you to consume very little water, 2 liters per minute, which is what you need to wash your hands. Now, again, these things are available in a wide range of flows, anywhere from 2 to 10 liters per minute. They cost $2 to $4 a piece, basically nothing. And in a typical guest room, they will save you about $150 per aerator over 5 years. In most cases, these things last at least 10 years. So you'll spend maybe, let's say, $3 over the lifetime. You make anywhere from $150 to $300, which again is a really good deal. Again, possible sources, Tricontinental, the company that I told you about, they're exhibiting there at the fair, or internet vendors, recommended brand, again, Neopearl, they produce the best ones. There may be some other good quality aerators out there. However, make sure that, especially if you're going to buy a lot of them, try to find like some references of people who've used them and make sure that they last, okay? Next recommendation, minimize water losses in toilets. This seems to be like a no-brainer, but there are lots of things that can go wrong with toilets, and very often they are overlooked. And when you have something going wrong in a toilet in terms of water consumption, the water losses can be absolutely enormous. So this is data that I collected from a 55-room hotel where I worked. And so here you can see the water consumption, the hourly water consumption. This is one day. The columns in yellow are nighttime water consumption from midnight to 6 o'clock in the morning. You can see that the water consumption is very low, which makes sense. And here what happened is that something happened, and look at what happened at the water consumption of this hotel. Even at night, before it was consuming maybe 200 liters per hour, here at night it was consuming 1,000. And the problem there is one of the flush mechanisms got stuck and remained open, and basically the toilet just flushed continuously. And so one toilet alone with a defective flush mechanism more than doubled the total water consumption of this 55-room hotel. This is the whole hotel, so this all of the rooms, plus the laundry, plus the kitchen, plus everything. One toilet doubled or tripled it. So you have to be really careful. So what are the typical problems? Well, you have leaks. You know, whenever you see the water kind of moving in the toilet, that means that there's some water trickling in. Very often that happens because there's too much water in the tank, so the water overflows down this tube. Or the flapper valve, which sits here below, is old, such as this one, and therefore it's no longer able to seal. And the typical water losses are about 150 to 700 liters per day. Now you have to keep in mind that you and I, a typical person, we consume about 150 liters per day. So just one of these leaking toilets consumes as much water as one person. And these leaks, very often people are aware that they're there, but they think, oh, you know, it's so little, you don't have to worry about it. And they could go on for years. The bigger problem is when the flush mechanism gets stuck. So here you see that this is the arm of the lever that you activate in order to flush the toilet. It's resting on top of this flapper valve, preventing it from flushing, from closing. Then you can see all of the water just running out. Here's the same thing. Now this float is resting against the tip of this thing, so it stays open. And then just you have, instead of just a little trickle, you have a continuous flow that can waste, you know, up to 300 to 1,000 liters per hour. So basically it's equivalent to 2 people, to the water consumption of 2 people every hour. Another issue, which is a little bit contentious, I understand, is this is a double flush mechanism of a toilet. So basically, if you press this part of the button, you get half a flush. If you press that part of the button, you get a full flush. These things are great if they're very, very good. But the problem is that the mechanism, as you can see, is kind of complicated. So if they're not handled with care, if they're not maintained properly, you can end up having a lot of problems. So whatever water you're saving with this full flush, half flush, you can blow it if this thing gets stuck and remains open for a couple of hours. So be very careful. So what are the recommendations? Well, train your housekeepers to detect these problems. So they are the ones who go, by the way, housekeepers know where your leaking toilets are, but they don't tell you because maybe you haven't told them that you cared. Then you also have to make sure that you tell your housekeepers to report whatever problems they see. Very often what happens is that the housekeepers find a flushing mechanism that is blocked, and then they just wiggle the handle and then it closes, no problem, the problem is fixed. Well, the thing is, the problem is not fixed. It was fixed for the moment, but the problem hasn't been fixed long-term. It's going to happen again. So instead of having them fix the problems, they should report that to management or to the engineer. So all of the problems that are identified should be corrected very, very quickly. You should keep a stock of spare parts. These parts don't cost that much money. This is a complete flush valve that costs about $5. Keep it on hand, so if you have a problem, you can repair it immediately. And also be very careful with the double flush toilets, such as these. If you want to install them in your hotel, make sure that whatever you install is a proven model. So find another hotel that's used them and that doesn't have any problems. Don't just pick it off the shelf, because if it's not a good model, you're going to regret it. Double flush toilets are great when it's in your own house. You're the one who knows how to operate it and you care about them. In a hotel, I think that they're a problem because people don't know how to use it. Guests normally don't go and press the half flush. And then if they're not very good, you end up with problems that can waste an enormous amount of water over just a very short period of time. I know it will sound like heresy to some, but believe me, that's my experience of 23 years. Use LED lamps. So these are LED lamps. These are the older energy efficient lamps. These were compact fluorescent lamps, and these are the very old incandescent or tungsten lamps. Now, LED lamps have a lot of benefits. They're more energy efficient. They consume 85% less energy than that, 50% less energy than these. They have a very long life, 15,000 hours here, just 8,000 hours here, just 1,000 hours here. Also, they don't contain any mercury, which is was a problem with these types of lamps. And nowadays, LEDs, you can find them everywhere. They're not even that expensive in most parts of the world, and they are enormously cost effective. And just to show the point, this is the operating cost of equivalent lamps. So this is a 7-watt LED that produces as much light as a 14-watt compact fluorescent lamp that produces as much light as a 50-watt incandescent lamp. So per 1,000 hours, this LED will cost you about $1.60, $1 in energy, and about 50 cents worth of lamp, because you need to replace it every once in a while. A compact fluorescent lamp would cost you about $2.10, so quite a bit more. And this thing is $8 per 1,000 hours. Basically, these things, a lot of people think that they're a great idea because they're really cheap. It's true, they typically cost about $1. But believe me, you don't make enough money to be able to afford this kind of technology. The only people who can afford buying incandescent lamp are the ultra rich. If you're not ultra rich, please stay away from them and buy LED lamps instead. So the recommendations is buy good quality LED lamps. Don't buy unknown brand. Keep in mind that you're investing in something that's going to last you for 5-10 years. So saving $1 buying a no-name brand instead of paying $1 extra to buy Philips or Panasonic just doesn't make any sense whatsoever. Buy the right shape of lamp. You have a lot of different types of shapes. I don't have the time to go into that, but this is not going to give you the same result as this or as this, etc., etc. Make sure that you also buy the correct light color. So if it's for a guest room, make sure that you get the warm white, an LED that produces warm white light, which is kind of yellowish light that people find to be very pleasing. In a work area, you can have daylight, which is very harsh, kind of almost bluish light. But that would be great for your kitchens, for your laundry, for your work areas, but not for your guest rooms. Set standards, so like that, all of the people in maintenance know that, the lamp by the bedside uses this one 5 watts. Very often I go in hotels and there's a complete chaos in the types of lamps that are used throughout. And then keep a small stock of replacement lamps, so as soon as something goes wrong, you can replace them almost immediately. Then also keep in mind that very often I go in hotels, all of the public areas and all of the guest rooms have LEDs, but all of the back of house is all incandescent, which doesn't make any sense. First of all, the electricity that is consumed in the back of house costs you just as much as the electricity that's consumed in your guest rooms. And then also, generally in work areas, the lamps are on for much, much longer periods of time. Next, moving on to AC units, make sure that you provide good ventilation to the condensers of your AC units. This is called a condenser, it's the outside unit. So the way this thing works is that all of the heat that's removed from the room comes in here, and then you have a fan that sucks cold air or cool ambient air through the back of the unit, passes it through these cooling fins, and then this hot air is pushed out by the fan. And that is the way it works. That is the way it's designed to work, and that is the way it should work normally. But what I see very often are these kinds of solutions, improvised solutions made by hotels, because they think that this doesn't look very nice. And I agree with you, it doesn't look that nice. But what happens is that that's the way they have to work. So they put these fences around it to kind of hide it. But what happens is that then the hot air that comes out through the front, bounces off this fence, and then gets sucked in through the back. The same thing happens in here. So now instead of cooling this condenser with ambient air, let's say at 25, you're cooling it with ambient air at 30 or 35 degrees C, and the efficiency of your AC unit is shot. I'll show you this diagram just to show you what happens is when working. This is a well ventilated, so it has this kind of little fence, but it's open where the hot air gets pushed out. So it's designed to look better and to prevent any of this hot air recirculation. So what you see here, this is the amps. This is a current drawn by the unit. And this is the temperature that I measured here in the back. This is the temperature of the cold air that goes into the back of this condenser. And when the compressor starts working, you see that the amps go up, goes down, then it's rests for a while, it goes up and down. The temperature of the air going into the back of this unit stays more or less constant. Now, look what happens when you have this thing covered. So this is the same kind of unit, but in the earlier design was you had this fence in the front. Now look what happens. The amps not only increase, but then the compressor starts running for longer. And look at what happens at the temperature of the cold air or the cool ambient air that gets sucked in through the back. Every single time this AC unit starts running, the temperature just jumps up. Before it was at about 24 degrees, it goes up to 37, 38 degrees centigrade. So basically this unit is just going to consume 25, 50% more energy just because of this silly little fence that you have before. So by all means, don't ever do anything like this. Make sure that you allow your condensers to breathe, okay? Now, same thing for the inside unit. This is called an evaporator. Here, again, the way this is supposed to work is that the warmest air in the room is on the ceiling, it gets sucked on the top, it gets cooled and then blown as cold air into the room. So you have this loop going around like this all the time. Now, what I see in a lot of hotels is, again, they don't think that these things are very pretty, so they put them in a box. Well, you just blew it. Because now what's going to happen is that the cold air, instead of going into the room, it's just going to get trapped, or a lot of it is going to get trapped in this thing. And what you're going to be doing, you're just going to be cooling the cold air, which doesn't make any sense. You're not going to be cooling the room. So these are a couple of bad installations. Here it's inserted in a hole in the wall. This thing didn't produce any cold air, and this room was really hot. Here the evaporator is stuck in this recess in the roof. Here it almost looked like it's right, but it's so close to the ceiling that there's not enough space for this large volume of hot air to get in the back. This unit should have been maybe, probably like 5 centimeters lower. It would have been great. So you want to make sure that you don't have anything obstructing this airflow. Hot air comes in through the top, comes out through the bottom. You don't want to block that. Okay, next, make sure that the fins on the AC condensers are clean. Basically, I'm talking about, this is your condenser. Here on the back, after a while, it gets covered with dust and leaves and dirt, and you need to clean it because otherwise you don't have any airflow going through this unit. If you don't have airflow, this thing is just not going to cool. Now, to do this properly, you can either vacuum it, but if the dirt doesn't come out, what you need to do, or you need to get somebody who knows what he's doing, what they need to do is open up the top of this unit and clean it from the inside out with a hose. So like that, you don't push the dirt in, you just get it out. Same thing with the evaporators. You have to make sure that the air filters, which are here, are clean. These should be inspected and cleaned at least once every 3 months. It takes a minute to do the work, and it makes a big difference. Not only does it allow the AC unit to work better, but it also increases the airflow through the unit. This is a measurement that I made in a hotel. With this dirty filter, you were getting an airflow of 2.8 meters per second. After I cleaned it, the airflow went up by 50%, up to 4.2 meters per second, and the room cooled down a lot faster. And the only difference was a little bit of dust on this air filter. Now, you also want to make sure that you don't have a bed format that is not designed to your climate. This is a hotel, this is a picture that I took in a very beautiful hotel in Laos. They have this wonderful bed. The problem is that this is a bed designed for England or for Scandinavia in wintertime, but not for Laos in the summertime. Because in most cases, most of your guests would not be able to survive a single night without air conditioning in their room because it would just be much too hot. So giving them a bed which has a really thick comforter doesn't make any sense. And what happens is that if you give them a very warm bed, they'll go to bed and they'll realize that they're a little bit too hot. And so what they do is that they just crank the AC temperature down. And running a room at a temperature of 25 degrees centigrade is not the same energy-wise as running the same room at 22 or 21 degrees centigrade. And here I'll show you the difference. This is the energy consumption of an AC unit when the AC thermostat is set at 25. Here again, the compressor goes on and off, but overall, this unit consumes about 1.1 kilowatt of power when set at 25. At this point, what I did is that I reduced the temperature down to 24, and look at what happens. The AC unit starts now, it starts running for longer periods of time. And when you integrate this, Now, this AC unit, when it's running at 24 degrees centigrade, it consumes 1.6 kilowatts of power. So just reducing the temperature of that room by 1 degree centigrade increased the energy consumption of your AC units by 40%. I said 40%, huge. And if you're located in the tropics, AC units are your biggest energy consumers by far. So just giving somebody a very thick comforter, you're going to be shooting yourself in the foot. You're going to be paying for it by forcing your AC units to run a lot longer. So what are some of the options? This is my favorite hotel in the world. It's a small hotel in Indonesia that's called Cempedak. It's open air, all made out of bamboo. There's just a ceiling fan on top of the bed. Obviously, since there's no AC, they can give you a comforter. So it's just a top sheet, nothing more. This thing is just there for decorations. So you can make a beautiful, and this is, I'm sure that you will all agree, this is a truly beautiful bed. So you don't need to have a very thick comforter in order for a bed to look good. So either you can make a bed with a top sheet, or you can make, during the warm, and obviously during the warm months of the year, you can make a bed which uses a comforter cover with nothing inside, or a very, very, very thin cotton blanket inside. So like that, it feels like you're covered by something, but it's nowhere close to being as thick as a comforter. Now, I don't want to talk about AC, about PV panels, because I think that it's a great solution, but it's a great solution only if you've already taken care of all of these low-hanging fruits. And the reason for that is because actually saving energy with PV panels, or producing energy with PV panels, takes a lot of work and a lot of equipment. So just to give you an idea, what would be the impact of providing a room with a thick duvet on the size of a solar array? This is a solar array on top of a guest room block. Well, this is the impact. You give them a thick duvet. Basically, you need 8 of these panels in order to produce the electricity that is the additional amount of electricity that is consumed by the AC unit, because of the fact that now, since they have a thick duvet, instead of running their AC unit at 24, they have to run it at 22 degrees centigrade. And 8 PV panels, these are big PV panels, 1.7 square meters. These things are very expensive. They occupy a lot of space. So you're much better off, instead of installing PV panels, just give your guests a bed that is reasonable. Train housekeepers to conserve energy. There are lots of things that you can do. These are very simple. You can read them on your own. But basically, they should make sure that the AC units don't run any cooler or any longer than absolutely necessary. Then the last example that I wanted to talk about, because I know that I'm running out of time, is to minimize the use of your laundry dryers. Laundry dryers are enormously wasteful equipment. We did a study with many hotels in Luang Prabang, and we found that the AC dryers, such as these ones, consumed anywhere from 15 to 25% of the total energy consumption of hotels. It's enormous. And what happens is that in Luang Prabang, actually, you can line dry your linens almost year round. So if you wanted to again, just to give you the analogy of PV panels, if you wanted to produce enough solar electricity in order to be able to run these 2 electric dryers in these 50-room hotels, you would have needed 420 panels, which is absolute madness. If instead, as you can see here, these are 2 properties, very environmentally friendly properties that I worked with, they line dry all of the linens. If this is what you do, you need 0 panels. Which of the 2 do you think is a better solution? I'm sure that you'll agree that not using electric dryers is the best solution. Okay, so I'm done. I'm sorry I went a little bit over. If you have any questions, I'd be more than glad to answer them. Or feel free to contact me directly. You have my email address, it's right here. I'd be more than glad to chat with you or to answer whatever questions you may have. Thank you.
Patricia, I think we have one question in the Q&A box at the bottom.
Okay.
So the question is,
do you think the hotel industry will be motivated? If they receive green or sustainable certifications. Well, what happens is that I don't really know what you mean by more motivated, because I mean, right now, any property that wants, you can get Travel Life, or you can apply for Travel Life or Green Globe or all of these certifications. Very often I see that properties are not that motivated, or if they are motivated to do so, it's because it makes them look, it gives them like a green credential that allows them to stand above their competition. What happens is that I think that these certifications are not bad, but they alone won't solve your problems. I've worked with a lot of properties that had, Green Globe, Earth Check, Travel Life certifications, where most of the simple measures that we spoke about in this presentation had not been implemented. So it's not because you have these, even if it's platinum level Travel Life, that you will have taken care of all of those things. So I view these certifications with a little bit of skepticism. However, I do realize that it gives properties a framework to start caring about these issues. So it kind of pushes properties to start thinking about doing the right thing. However, them alone are not going to solve your problems. I think that a lot of these issues just require motivation and an open-mindedness on the part of your owners, your GMs, and your upper management.
Great. Thank you so much, Patricio. That's actually the only question that we have, and we've run out of time. So this is the perfect point to bring your workshop to a conclusion. So thank you to everybody for joining this session. I think it was really interesting and eye-opening to see, like you said, the low-hanging fruit, which all hoteliers can take advantage of in order to reduce costs and have a positive impact on the environment. I think sometimes the wrong perception about implementing sustainability measures is that they can be very expensive to invest in to begin with.
I mean, if there's one thing that I want you to take away from this presentation, is that putting all of these measures, these sustainability measures in place, is the simplest thing and the most cost-effective thing that you will ever do in your life. So by all means, do it. I know that all of you have these opportunities on your property. I know it for a fact. So please do it. It's going to benefit you greatly, and it's going to benefit the environment as well. Okay, so thank you very much. Please reach out to me if you have any questions. I'll be more than glad to help out in any way I can. Thank you.
Great, thanks, Patricia. I think there's nothing more for me to add on there. So I'd just like to inform everybody about our next panel discussion, which will be starting in 20 minutes at 10:30 Laos time, and that will focus on what to do now to build back stronger and greener. So we hope you can join us for that. Thank you, Patricia. Thank you, viewers, and good luck implementing sustainability.